And we are back with another edition of How About Them Celtics Talking C's with Bobby Kravitsky. Bobby, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Stayed up late last night to watch Nikola Jokic bury a shot from 35 feet at the buzzer. No regrets. Awesome game.
That was nuts. That was one of the craziest shots I've ever seen, like live while I was watching a game. I was like, well, because the Nugget, we don't spend a lot of time on the Nuggets. Nuggets came all the way back from like down 18 with 6 minutes left, and then Jokic just did that to the Warriors. It's just that was amazing. It was so
Can't
funny. Sam, how
imagine.
you doing?
Well, see, like Jack knows this, but Bobby has not been introduced to Cynical Sam, where I see moments happen and I'm like, damn, I would be really mad if that happened to the Celtics.
Of
Like,
course.
like I see them like, oh wow, like they were up 123 to 105 and they finished with 127 and they lost. What? I'd be furious. I feel like I did watch that happen in the same building like 2 weeks ago.
So that's where
I
your mind
kinda,
goes when this stuff happens is
yeah,
what if
like
it happened to the Celtics?
like I'm not even like sick. Great play, Jokic. I'm like, wow, I'd be mad. Like I watched the end of that Spurs Bucks game yesterday. Credit to me for watching games that don't have the Celtics in them. But Giannis made like back-to-back threes in clutch time, and I was like, I would be furious. I wouldn't know what to do with myself if Giannis was just drilling threes. And then the Spurs absolutely sold it. They had great looks at the end. Sohan missed one who, I mean, that's kind of what you expect. They left him for a reason, but Trey Jones also had a good chance to tie the game, and he missed it. Just a good night of basketball overall. You don't
Yeah,
get that from me very often.
two great games. What I want to know, Sam, if what happened to the Warriors happened to the Celtics, are you coming on the Talking Seas pod with the paper bag over the head?
I might be. It may be a paper bag outing. Like that.
It's
That
paper
is
bag
like all
worthy for a
time
regular
bad.
season game.
That also is true. Like a regular season game is maybe not paper bag worthy, but I was pretty close against the Warriors. I was furious with that.
It was a rough one. Or I mean, it was great. It was super fun to watch, but you'd be sick if you're a fan of the opposing team. Anyways, let's start with Brad Stevens. We talked about it briefly in our video we put out this morning. Brad Stevens talked at practice yesterday, as you guys are listening to this, about potential trades the Celtics could make at the deadline. He mentioned the potential desire to get a big wing, though that person could be in-house already, or he could go, get one. He said they are limited in the assets they could potentially use to bring in guys. Obviously noted the Grant Williams TPE as their best asset. Talked about the big man rotation with Cornette and Cada, the potential, to make Cada's two-way deal into a standard contract. Bobby, what were your biggest takeaways from Brad Stevens?
Yeah, you can see that they want to preserve the flexibility to go into the trade deadline with an open roster spot. And then there's also the buyout market to consider in that regard. But there's a distinct possibility that Cada gets this two-way contract converted. I think that he's certainly earned that. There might be a better opportunity or potential addition that prevents it from happening, but he's worthy of it, and there's a legitimate chance of it coming to fruition for him. And then the other one is that he basically acknowledged that, hey, we know the injury and age-related risks with Kristaps and Al Horford, but at the same time, we're so restricted here that who is it that we can get that's worth acquiring as an upgraded insurance policy, if you will. So I think they're going to stick to their guys. If they bring in a center, you would anticipate it's someone who's roughly the caliber of who they already have in Cornette and Cada, which suggests that it's unlikely unless there's someone who they really love for a particular reason, maybe defensively in the playoffs. They think this person is more versatile than the two of them, for example. And then, yeah, as far as just wanting a big wing, I think it'll be interesting if we bat around some options here as we move forward in this show.
Yeah, I got a big time kick out of listening to Brad just destroy the dreams of those that love trade talk, because he was like, listen, what do you want out of me? We got nothing that we can trade. All of our money's tied up in the top six, and those guys can't go anywhere. Pritchard is the next most expensive player, and you don't want to trade him. He's poison pilled, and it makes it more difficult to do that. There really aren't a ton of moves they can make. The only name that comes up is greatest rebounder of all time, Andre Drummond, for the backup big guy situation. And that it may be a thumbs down, despite his resurgence as the greatest rebounder of all time as of late. Somebody in our comment section, Jack, was like, did you see he had 23 and 25 the other day, and then he had another 13 and 16 game? How can you not want this guy? It's like, well, one, he's getting a ton of minutes to do that. And two, like, he's just not going to fit in what the Celtics are trying to do. Like, he's going to clog the spacing up. It's going to be tough. Like, yes, Kornet doesn't exactly stretch the floor, but he's good enough at having a feel for what the team is trying to do. You don't need to put somebody else that's new in there. You're already doing that with Kata, who has a very similar skill set to Drummond. Why would you bring in somebody to curb his development slash gelling of team chemistry? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And, you know, Jack, I'll kick it to you, and then we can talk about the wing options, because I know you've got some and Bobby's got some, and I'll respond because I don't have as many other than O'Shea Brissett. Just look out for him.
I was waiting.
That's my guy.
I was about to pull up a Google Doc and just write Sam is going to talk about O'Shea Brissett on it before you talked about it, because I knew it was coming. And it's and I mean it's not that I'm it's not that it's like an invalid thing, because it's very valid. It's probably what's going to end up happening.
There's just not a lot of places to go.
I know. It's just all we've talked about for the last 3 weeks, and you know it's coming every time. But
I'm harping on it. I'm pushing all my chips in.
I know.
If it pans out, get ready, buddy, because I'm gonna let you know. If he starts drilling, you're gonna be like going to practices and like seeing him start to make a couple threes, and you're gonna kind of like be kicking yourself. You're gonna be like, man, like this can't be happening. Like he's gonna really let me know that he was right. Like you're gonna see him have like an off practice, and you're gonna be nodding to yourself. And you're gonna be like, yeah.
I'm gonna have to put you on the screen by yourself, because I don't want to hear about O'Shea Brissett. Sam, you're making me sick of O'Shea Brissett, and I like O'Shea Brissett.
From now on, when I get O'Shea content, I'm tagging Sam. Like him shooting at practice, I'm tagging Sam LaFrance.
I'll run with it. I'll be like, looking good today. Like keep it up, and then I'll tag him. I'll be like, we're almost there. We're ready.
Jack has Derrick White, but more impressively, Sam has O'Shea.
I don't know why you're mad at me for being positive. Is it because it's not my thing? Am I intruding on your area?
It's not, Sam. You're turning a positive into a negative by saying, "I'm gonna let you know when I'm right." That's why.
It's not even because you were like, "I'm sick of it." I'm like, "Well, listen, I think this is the way."
I know, and I was just making a joke because I knew it was going to happen. But as far as Brad Stevens, like you guys said, there's not much that can be done. There's no real method of adding a real rotation player. Bobby, you asked him at practice, like, what about adding a rotation center? And he was basically like, I mean, where do you find a rotation center for the assets we got? Like, it's not something that's easy.
Phrased the question. I was trying to be diplomatic with it. I wish I'd been more direct, because really what is the talk of so many people, and I get asked this when I go on radio shows all the time, is, hey, are they comfortable moving forward with Kristaps and Al and not a better insurance policy behind the two of them? So I figured I'd ask the man responsible for that decision, or the driver behind it. You know, obviously Austin Agent Company have a say as well in the front office. So I figured I'd ask him. But yeah, you do kind of understand. And, you know, we all play armchair GM and try to make these moves. They're limited in what they can do. And so they can have the green light from ownership all they want, but the restrictions that are beyond their control suggest that they really have no choice but to accept the risks that come with just hoping that Porzingis and Horford stay healthy.
1 of 10, how concerned are you both about the health and ability of those guys to be there when the spring rolls around? Because that is really the only argument I can see against just running with what you got. You know, like, that's the only thing commenters say to us when we're like, I don't see why people don't like Kornet and Kata. And I kind of get it. It's like, if one of those guys goes out, you would like somebody a little bit better to be eating up minutes. But I don't know. I think they've done a really good job of monitoring the health of both of them. I mean, Al Horford, little preview of the Jazz thing tonight, he's just going to sit. They're like, we don't care about the Jazz. Suit up for the Pacers, buddy. So 1 of 10, concern over those guys. 10 being, I don't think they're going to be ready for the spring, and 1 being they're going to be fine.
I get 2. Like, I don't know. I'm not too concerned. Like, you get it with the history, you get it with Al's age, but
I'm close to you on that.
1, I think Kata and Kornet have been pretty fine, and 2, I think you can get creative with some other lineups with the other talent you have on the roster. I don't know. It just from what we've seen, they've looked like they've held up pretty well.
So here's my thing. I would say that for Al Horford, it's honestly like a 0. For Kristaps, though, because of the left calf strain, which popped up a day after Thanksgiving, pretty early in the season, he had the plantar fasciitis develop in the offseason. So for him, I'm at a 5. 7'3", history of lower body injuries, a few small things that have flared up in recent months. So they've done a great job with him. And every time he's on the floor, he looks good. But you do just kind of have to clutch your pearls a little bit and hold your breath. And then what Jack just said is something I've been writing about, which is Cornette and Keita have done a really good job as number 3 level centers. And if it's Kristaps, then you can probably put a little more mileage on him in the playoffs to make it easier for either one of them to be the number 2 role. I think you can do it with Horford too, honestly. But that other option there, going small, and especially with Tatum at the 5, they did it against the Magic by necessity when they were shorthanded, and it worked really well. And Orlando was having trouble offensively and couldn't keep up defensively and get stops. And Joe Mazzulla even said afterward that he felt like he didn't see it as a disadvantage that they had to work around. He was more looking at the advantages it created by having Tatum play the pivot. So I think that in their back pocket is another curveball that they would go to if forced to.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I think a lot of the talk from, we'll call it the general Celtics fan, comes from Luke Cornette sucks, and that's where a lot of the concern comes from, which we've talked about plenty of times. But as far as potential additions, and we can talk about the big wing Brad supposedly wants to add, the center, or whatever you want. The reality of the situation is there's just not much out there at the price, because you kind of have to look at guys who make $6 million or less. You can kind of creep up into that $8 million range, $10 million range if you really want to say, like, let's throw together 1 million contracts and get some of these deep bench guys out of there, which I don't know if that's really what the Celtics are looking to do. Any names that pop to the front of your mind, Bobby, when you look at potential additions Celtics go for?
So if you hadn't said the word additions, I was going to say I'm O'Shea Brissett. I think it's a prime opportunity. Brad said that he looks internally and thinks that they have players that can fill this role. It's why the first signing they made was O'Shea Brissett. It's why they lobbied Lamar Stevens to come to Boston. So I do think they have legitimate candidates internally to solve the problem. And then externally, the guy who was at the top of my list was Torrey Craig. And I wonder if the injury there with the right plantar fascia, it's an 8 to 10 week timeline, and it happened in late December. So there's a chance. I know that he told the Bulls beat reporters that he thinks he's going to come back earlier than that, but there's also a chance that he's not on the floor playing for you until March. It's an extended rotation type of role. Maybe the Celtics can take that on and feel good about it. But I also wonder if they look in a different direction, and the options aren't appealing to begin with. So I don't know. I mean, cobbling players together to go get Cedi Osman, I don't love that, to be honest. They're linked to John Conchar, but he's 6'5", so he doesn't fit the big wing profile to me. So yeah, I don't love really any of the options out there. Although Jalen McDaniels from the Raptors has had 2 big games in his career against Boston, including recently. So he's another name that I would, this is not reporting or anything, but just another name to keep an eye on, because Brad Stevens has an affinity for bringing in players who show out against the Celtics.
Brad Stevens has a list. He is like the Ryan from The Office. Anytime somebody has a good game, he's writing it down. He's remembering. McDaniels is an interesting one. I just pulled up the NBA standings because I was curious of, like, okay, we're getting to a point where teams kind of know where they stand. The problem is there are a lot of, like, tight races, like in the Western Conference, for example. 12th place Utah is only 4 games behind 7th place Dallas. Like, there is wiggle room for them to try and make a little bit of a climb. So you can't be like, what does Utah have? Even though we could tonight watch it and be like, hey, what about this guy, Chris Dunn? There are plenty of people around the league that are, like, serviceable rotation pieces, but they're always on good teams. Like, somebody like DeAndre Jordan came to mind just because it's somebody that's been a part of successful teams. He's on the Nuggets. He's not leaving. They're not going to give him up. They trust him to eat up minutes if Jokic isn't going to be in. That's why he's on the team. He's like their Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is a great name. It would be sick if Blake Griffin returned. And the fact that Blake Griffin has not decided to join another team now January 5th might say something. I know the Celtics were always open to him coming back. The roster spot is still open. So I think Blake Griffin's name might start popping up again just because everyone's bored and we're all like, what do they need to do? I'd like to have him back. He's somebody that proved he could eat up a large amount of minutes last year when Horford needed the day off. He did a great job as a starter. He was efficient. He hit the glass. He hustled. He played hard. That's really all you can ask out of somebody that's just sitting on the end of the bench waiting for the opportunity to eat up, like, I don't know, be the garbage pail guy, but also be the class clown.
I mean, I wouldn't complain to Blake Griffin. We've talked about it before. There's just so few names, and all the names that you can bring up as potential additions we've brought up a million times, like Dean Wade, John Conchar, like you said. The only reason I think John Conchar could be more interesting is because he has a contract that increases past this season. So he's making, what's the number? He's making 2.4 million this season, but then each year after that, he's making 6.1 for 3 seasons in a row. So that would just turn into a trade chip the Celtics could use to add another guy. Another name that I don't know how available it would be, or he would be. The Clippers traded for Daniel Tice, but Mason Plumlee's coming back now. So I don't know who would be available in that mix, but if the Clippers wanted to add a pick and lower their luxury tax bill or whatever, although Steve Ballmer probably doesn't have a problem with that, you could look at adding one of those centers out there. Nick Richards in Charlotte is maybe somebody you could look at. I know the floor guys love Simone Fontecchio in Utah, though he's having a pretty great season. So I don't know if they'd look to trade him. There's just not a lot out there that you could look at that's one available and two fits into the TPE and makes it a gettable target for the Celtics. So, I mean, that's the tough part of all this. And at the end of the day, it'll probably just be either a buyout guy or nobody. And that's what fans will have to live with. But moving on, Derrick White was on The Old Man and the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter today. I haven't gotten the chance to listen to the full episode. I've seen a few clips floating around, but Bobby, what are some of your biggest takeaways or anything of note from that episode? You can fill me in. I'm going to watch it a little bit later, but
yeah, I've just seen the clips. I'm with you, Jack, so I'm going to watch it later as well. But as far as a Celtics related one, just how they came to him, the Marcus Smart trade, obviously something that caught him off guard. And so once it happened and they came to him and said, hey, you're going to have the ball in your hands more, he started gearing up for that. Then they bring in Drew Holiday. He didn't say this explicitly, but maybe there's a little uncertainty before there's communication with the team. But they came to him and said, it's still the same role. Do your thing. And then he specifically praised Drew Holiday. Obviously, he's won the Twyman Stokes Award multiple times for Teammate of the Year for his selflessness and just saying, hey, if do your thing, you need me in the corner, I'm here. Whatever you need for me to do, I'll go and take on that role to help you and help the group shine. And that's really helped Derrick White. And then obviously having not only Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but Porzingis on the floor with him too, a great deal, that has unlocked Derrick White, to use his words. So that was certainly interesting from a local perspective. And then he talked about his time with the Spurs, how his first preseason game, he played pretty well and he was kind of feeling himself. And then it got back to him that Greg Popovich post-game was asked what Derrick White's role is going to be for the Spurs team. And he said, he's going to get the towels. And I think he said the coffee or something like that as well. And he said, okay, I guess this is going to go a little differently than I might have anticipated coming off that performance.
Another great tidbit from this was that, so last season, Derrick White went on the Redick pod. He was shooting really, really well from three. They told him he was shooting well from three. Then he fell off a cliff. They accidentally told him he was shooting well from three again. And there was the little he's going to suck now. And White kind of talked about it. And he was like, well, listen, this year I feel a lot different. The team has this extreme confidence in me. And I have this extreme irrational confidence in myself too, where I feel anytime I'm open, I need to shoot it. I'm in a great spot. They trust me with the ball. They want me to take these shots. And I think we've seen that. It's one of the reasons why Derrick White is averaging career highs across the board. The shared confidence between him and his teammates is so important. And as a basketball player, it's always important that they trust you to do your thing. The shot against the Raptors last week was something they kind of joked about because he had to create that for himself. It was a difficult fall away three in the clutch and he buried it. And that wasn't something you would have seen from Derrick White last year. It's just not what was asked of him. It's not what his role was. And they kind of talked to him about being a role player too. And I know that clip has gone around because he's like, listen, it's not always about you, buddy. That's kind of what you have to tell yourself. And you go a while without shooting the ball or even touching the ball, and then you're expected to knock down shots. So his confidence being rock solid is so important for his ability to not always have to be a big part of the offense, but still be absolute nails when they need him to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have to say how awesome Derrick White has been out of anybody here.
You always talk about Derrick White being awesome. What the? I knew I could have put it on a Google Doc that Jack was going to say how great Derrick White was.
See, the difference is I'm not jumping at the bit to tell you how right I was and brag how right I was, you motherfucker.
I brag for you. I'm like, Jack was on this one first.
Yeah, no.
By the way, I think that Jack, because he was so early to the party last season, has earned the right to puff his chest out.
Oh, he
about
absolutely
what Derrick
does.
White's doing.
I'm just teasing him. He was on it since the trade.
Listen,
He wrote
Derrick
an
White's
article in the Celtics blog when the trade happened. He was like, this rules. It's still there.
I mean, if you saw what they were doing at Team USA with him and the Celtics out there, defensively, it was pretty impressive.
Listen, I love Derrick White. My favorite quote from JJ Redick, and again, I haven't listened to the full thing, but I've seen bits, I've read stuff, whatever. I'm going to listen to it later today. He goes, Derrick, I want to apologize. I'm going to tell you why, because I know deep down you don't like the attention, and I feel like between my top 100 rant, and I know they asked you about it, and then my mistake of a tweet on Christmas saying you're an all-star, I brought a lot of attention your way, so I'm sorry. And I just think that embodies Derrick White so much that JJ Redick is apologizing for publicizing how great he's been this season. He's like, yeah, sorry, my bad, man. I just thought that was funny. There was the clip yesterday of Derrick talking about being a role player in the Celtics and how he kind of worked his way up and earned the trust of the team, saying it started with defense, all that stuff. It's just like everything he's done this season has been it's weird because he was almost not expected to be. You expected him to take a step back with all the guys they added, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, except he's just like taken a step forward, and all of his numbers are career highs. While everyone else on the team is, I don't know if career low numbers is necessarily it, but like down from last year at the very least, and everyone's okay with it because Derrick White's so good. And so it's just, I mean, it's been super fun to watch. It was fun to hear him talk about it, and I'm excited to listen to the rest of the episode later today. Any other tidbits we missed that you guys heard on Derrick White before we move on to the next thing?
Well, just if you remember when Kristaps Porzingis was on with JJ Redick, he said that Joe Mazzulla earlier in the season had them go around, and I don't know if they had to do something for each teammate or just pick someone, but basically it was say something you like about them and something that bothers you. And Kristaps chose Derrick White. And he said that, Derrick, you make the right play every single time to the point that when you don't, it bothers me. It's frustrating. It's like, what just happened? So that exemplifies the Derrick White experience. It's within the flow of the offense, for example, that he's doing this. He's not hijacking it or anything. Like, he is playing selfless basketball too. It just tends to call for him to be the one to make either the critical pass, the drive, or the shot, and he's consistently executing.
Yeah, to Jack's point about all the career highs and, nobody really expected this from him and kind of expected to see sacrifice have to come from his neck of the woods. He and Drew Holiday are probably flopped, like where you would have thought they would be at this point in the season. Like, you would have thought Derrick White was like the 12 points a game guy, and like he's just not just kind of there because Drew Holiday does a lot of great things. He's great on defense. He's taken on the challenge of guarding the bigger guys. I think he's been huge for them in big moments this year throughout the course of games where it's like the big swing stretches. But the stat sheet says, hey, he's not doing a whole lot. He's taking the least shots since his rookie year. His scoring's down. You name it. Like, you can point out a lot of things and be like, well, he's not the same, even though he's fine. But you would have thought that would be Derrick White. You would have thought Drew Holiday would have had more of the spotlight when he was traded here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been great to see, and I think it just shows how much the Celtics trusted him when they made the smart trade, like y'all talked about. And his ability to just step up in these moments. The trust is there. Last thing we got, Celtics got a couple games coming up. Obviously tonight, as we're recording this, and as this episode is dropping, they've got the Utah Jazz, former Celtics coach Will Hardy coming to town, and then they got the Pacers, who, if you want to call them a thorn in their side because they beat him in the in-season tournament, sure. They also beat him by 50 early in the season, though there was no Tyrese Halliburton. And Pacers on a bit of a hot streak to beat the Bucks twice. Bobby, what are you looking for in these upcoming couple games against Utah and Indiana?
So people might not remember this when it comes to playing the Jazz, but they beat them in Utah, and you can call it a scheduled loss. It was towards the end of a West Coast trip, but nonetheless, they beat them. And then the other game that was here in Boston, it got real chippy. It came down to the end. They even had, I'm blanking on his name, the guy who spent most of the season, Luka Samanic, who came from Maine to Utah and then even played pretty well in his minutes there. Chris Dunn had a good game. So they were competitive. It was chippy. Dunn, local kid, was in the mix with that. That's kind of his gritty nature and style. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here and how the Celtics deal with Walker Kessler at the rim, because they've had some trouble. I would say it's been a mixed bag, right, against the bigger rim protecting centers that they've gone up against. Certainly some wins in there, but also some losses. And so it'll be interesting to see how they fare against Walker Kessler at the rim.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a good opportunity for Kristaps Porzingis to not exploit, but make him uncomfortable, to pull him out of the paint. Because with Horford out, Porzingis will probably see a little bit more playing time. And also, his whole thing this year has been, hey, look how far away I can shoot threes from. My heel's on the leprechaun. And Walker Kessler is not necessarily going to be used to that. I'm also kind of excited to see John Collins try and defend people. I loved that wrinkle of the Hawks series last year where he was just a traffic cone. Might be the new Dame Lillard thing this year to keep an eye on when they play them. But as far as Kessler goes, I hope that they're able to exploit him, because Porzingis has been down shooting. He hasn't been as reliable as he was earlier in the season. I don't know if it's a calf thing. Could just be like he got cold for a little bit thing. Very possible. But that's the whole appeal of having him on your team, is guys like Walker Kessler should have to work a little bit harder to protect the rim at the very least. And then, I mean, you take your pick. The rest of the guys are all shooters too. So if they decide they want to try and switch that, he's going to have the same kind of day.
Yeah. I think the matchup against Utah is interesting. I'm more intrigued by the matchup against Indiana. I wonder how much of it will be the Celtics knowing that they lost to Indiana last time and really wanted to go at them. The Pacers have been playing very well lately. Although, again, I'm going to say it every time we play the Pacers, the defense in Indiana is less than inspiring.
5 straight wins.
But they are hot. They have beaten some good teams, and the offense is clicking as well as it ever has. They made a lineup change in Indiana, so the Celtics will have to deal with that. They're rolling with Jalen Smith in the starting lineup now, as well as old friend Aaron Nesmith. So they've gotten a little bit bigger. They've gone away from the Buddy Hield because, again, the defense has been not great. But yeah, I think those two games will be fun. Anything else we missed that y'all want to talk about?
No, I mean, I can't wait for that either. Halliburton's a joy to watch, but should be fun with the 2-game miniseries in Indiana. And I think we hit on it all. Although I guess one other point could be, I wouldn't be surprised if Utah, especially if it's not going well with Kessler on Porzingis and he's hitting threes from the leprechaun, if they decide to put him on someone else. And look, the options there aren't great. You know, it becomes John Collins most likely on Porzingis, and you get him involved in the pick and roll. So it's advantage Celtics. But Walker Kessler wasn't built to be out that far anyways. So maybe they do decide that directly matching up with Porzingis isn't the direction they want to go.
Keep an eye on Walker Kessler tonight. See if his neck's okay. Did you guys see Jalen Duren just take a ride on his shoulders after the alley-oop dunk he had the other day when they went in that overtime throw against the Pistons?
Yes,
that was crazy. He
I didn't see it.
Jalen Duren just kind of landed on him. There's an old clip of Rondo doing this to somebody when he was in high school, but he dunked and he sat on his shoulders like a little kid. And it was you know how the kids stack in the trench coat? It was that, but with 2 7-foot guys. And he walked from the rim to the 3-point line. Then they collapsed.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch.
It was a little bit awkward, and there were a lot of people on both sides holding their breath there, but it was funny to watch.
That is
Also,
funny.
John Collins. I watched like a alley-oop compilation the other day. That man has some crazy alley-oop dunks over people.
He's got bunnies.
He's got like a whole mixtape by himself. He killed Embiid. He's had crazy dunks over other guys. Like, he is a joy to watch in that sense. So I'm curious to see if he's going to be flying through the air tonight. But again, can't wait to watch him play defense. It's
someone that Celtics fans desperately wanted there, John Collins.
For
It's
years.
crazy to think about.
Came out the womb being like, maybe he's going to be on the Celtics.
Him and Miles Turner, man. They were always a Celtic. Before we wrap, do you guys want to do a quick trivia card? I have one with fewer names, so we can rock through it quicker, so we don't sit.
I'm already gonna put my money on Sam, but of course I want to do it.
Sat up in my chair out of excitement.
Okay. All right. Let me change.
Sam is the
screen.
Ken Jennings of this.
All right. Let's take a look. All right. So we'll start with Bobby this time because I think we started with Sam last time. Through the 2021-22 season, 6 players have racked up 600 or more steals for the Celtics. Who are those 6 players, Bobby? I'll start with you. Career steals.
Dennis Johnson.
Dumb question.
No.
Wasn't here
Unfortunately not.
He might have been one of the best defensive backcourt players that they've had. It's on to Sam. I don't get to just throw out another guess, but damn.
Larry Bird.
Yes, Larry Bird is on the list. There we go.
All
right. Hey, I'm used to it. When we were doing the cards, it was a tough look, but you
So I'm willing to just take chances here and be a little bit of a gunslinger. Danny Ainge.
Not Danny Ainge.
Oh!
I'll give. Yeah, I'll let Sam go. Then I'll give you. I'll give some insight. Sam, go ahead.
Paul Pierce.
Yes.
Oh.
The clue I'll give is these are all.
Was a good and underrated defender. I wouldn't have guessed 600 steals.
They're very few. There's only 6 names, and almost all of them are pretty. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Marcus
like,
Smart.
they're all pretty. Yeah. There you go.
I needed to get on the board.
Yeah,
and
Marcus
if I gave
Smart
that to Sam just now, it'd be a real problem.
Yeah,
this is kind of like a little bit of a pull-up, but not really. Rondo.
Yeah, Rondo's on the list.
I wasn't sure if he played enough seasons. That's why I was like,
that he did. Bobby, back to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who was here long enough because my mind now starts to go to like the early 2000s guys, and if there's anyone from there, I will not be reading Jack's facial expression for clues. Kevin McHale.
No.
I'm so out on the whole 80s dynasty. They can all kick rocks.
I want to guess Tatum.
Not Tatum. No. Tatum not on
I
the
might have left if that was correct.
Tatum, how many steals is Tatum? That's a good question. He
probably
might be close
now, but through the 22 season, actually, it was a dumb guess.
Yeah. He's at 520 now.
Yeah.
And he was at about 410 through the 21-22 season. 600 is a lot of steals.
I'm gonna try for Avery Bradley.
Not Avery Bradley. One Sam guess. I'll give you all the eras of the last 2.
John Havlicek.
No, not John Havlicek. All right. One of them is Bobby. You were correct with the early 2000s era. It is somebody from then, and the other one is the core Celtics 80s, 90s. So, Bobby, it is you.
I'm trying to think who was here long enough to rack up 600 steals. I probably don't have the right answer, but why not? We're down horrendous. I'll go with Kenny Anderson.
Not Kenny Anderson, no.
Antoine Walker?
Yeah, Antoine Walker's on there.
Just by longevity. I didn't know if he had 1 steal in his career.
How many is he at? I don't know. Let me take a look.
I'll tell you. By the way, what a legend.
He had 828 in the Celtics uniform. So racked him up. All right, Bobby.
I wonder what he averaged over the course of his career.
Over the course of his career, he averaged 1.2 steals in a Celtics uniform, 1.5. So actually got a lot.
Not bad
In Boston, yeah.
Better than I anticipated.
All right, one name left on the board.
Did you give the era?
Yeah, it was the 80s, 90s. Early 90s, mostly 80s.
Was this person one of the answers to the last trivia?
No. Okay. What was the last trivia? 3-pointers?
3-pointers.
No, definitely not. That's another clue for you. Definitely not.
but they didn't have a ton of shooters back then. They had like the guys like the Jerry Seastings of the world, but they didn't play a ton. 80s, 90s, steals guy. Sam definitely has the answer locked and loaded. 80s into 90s.
That's when he played in Boston, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't have any names that come to mind that could possibly be it. And I know Sam is sitting there with it. I'm going to defer to Sam and just throw the lob. I don't have a clue.
I think it's Robert Parrish, yeah.
Yeah, it's Robert Parrish.
He got
Played
600.
like forever.
Yeah,
I should have just gone with the
Robert
longevity
Williams.
guys. Played myself.
Yeah.
But I just
The
wouldn't have thought that
longevity was
him or Antoine.
He racked up 873 steals in the Celtics uniform because just he leads. He played the most games ever as a Celtic? I think that's correct. I think that's what this underline means. Yeah. So the longevity it did it for him. All right. That was fun. I'm loving the trivia. I'm sorry you be fed to the wolves,
I'm thinking
Bobby.
of Scott Wedman and Jerry Seasting and all these guys who didn't even play long enough to get 600 steals. I'm thinking of guards. So I'm like, who the hell could this be? I was going for D Brown when I was asking if they were part of the last one we did. Yeah. Should have just gone with the guys that were here the longest.
All right. Any final thoughts, Bobby, before we get out of here?
No, just I'm more excited for the Pacers game, but definitely some interesting things to monitor against the Jazz on Friday night.
I agree. Very much excited. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to How About Them Celtics. Check out Bobby's work at SA.com inside the Celtics. We appreciate you tuning in, and I'll let Sam wrap it up.
Yes, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more Talkin' C's episodes. They do drop sporadically on usually, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're pumping them out. But you never know what time, so that bell will let you know when they're out. We also have the full-length pods, game recaps, film breakdowns, trade rumor breakdowns, and also we're live a half hour before every game. So tonight, as you're listening to this, we'll be live. Tomorrow, we'll be live. Come hang out. It's always a good time. Make sure you check out Bobby's work on Inside the Celtics for SI Media. He's doing a ton of work. He's at the practices. He's at the games, so you're going to get great coverage from him. You can follow him on Twitter at Bobby Kravitsky. You can follow and find us on Spotify and Apple as well. Our full-length audio pods and game recaps will always be there right to your inbox. Leave a 5-star review. Say something nice. And also say Jack looks like Genki, because that's still the best review we've got. You can reach out to us via email, hbtcpod@gmail.com. We go through the emails every single pod, and we make sure we give you some feedback on what you have to say. If you want us on socials, it's at How About Them C's, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The Facebook is just the name of the podcast. Our pregame streams are there, as well as Twitter. Jack's is at Jack Simone NBA. Mine is at Sam LaFrance NBA. That's it for us. Bye.